Hello. Good evening, Internet. Welcome to the stream. My name is Merrick Boyer. My pronouns are he, him, and today I am hanging out with Al Spader. Hi, Al.
Hey everyone,
How's it going?
happy to be back on the channel. I'm Al Spader, he, him, as well. I'm here to chat some Star Trek adventures.
Absolutely. Al is the lead writer of the book that you see on the screen, the Federation-Klingon War Tactical Campaign. That's
Yeah.
amazing. How did that happen? Like, how did you get involved in writing this particular book?
So I think I think when I started writing for Jim, I expressed interest in really liking mechanics, and I think that I wrote like a bunch of talents for it might have been Utopia Planitia or something like that, and Jim sent those off to Nathan to look at, and Nathan like didn't really have to fix any of them, and Jim was like, "Oh, Al gets the system, Al gets the
Nice.
layout. He likes mechanics." And when he had all those projects going at once, he's like, "I need some help." Michael Dismuke jumped on to do the captain's log as lead writer, and I jumped on to do this.
Excellent.
You'll see there's a lot of crunchiness and lots of rules type stuff that is available in this book. So.
And shout out to Michael, who is in the chat. Hello, Michael. Thanks for stopping by. And Malaloki, our new friend who dropped by our Expanse stream last night. Nice to see you again.
Nice.
Cool. Well, before we jump like really into the book, Al, what other stuff do you work on? Like, tell us a little bit about you again. You've been on the channel, you've run a couple of games for us, but for anybody new, tell us about you.
So I've been writing RPGs for probably about 8 years now. When D&D 5th edition first started their community content program, I was writing a lot of different modules for conventions, and probably did about, I don't know, 8 or 10 of those that are still up on and still sell copies on Drive-Thru RPG, which is interesting. And then COVID hit, and my groups were all at home, and some people wanted to play. They didn't want to keep playing D&D, so we talked about Star Trek Adventures. And I was like, all right, let's do it. I've got nothing else to do. So I jumped into Tabletop Simulator on Steam.
Yeah.
And they had a Star Trek Adventures module in there
Nice.
where you could just like do a virtual table, and it's 3D, and like one of the players had their VR set on, and they were walking
Whoa.
around the room and touching the table, and so it was really cool. Well, I started posting pictures of that in all of the Facebook groups and things like that, and Michael Dismuke saw me and asked me to come on to like some stream or a panel to share it. Jim Johnson happened to be on the panel, and through talking about being game masters and writers and whatnot, Jim eventually asked me to check some stuff out and to try some mission briefs, and been writing with him forever since. Probably going on 4 years now. So
Nice.
yeah, so I've done. I think my first book was the Player Guide Game Master Guide combo, and then I've worked on every book since then. I've also done a few. Oh yeah, right there. I've also done a few of the digital supplements. I've done a couple of mission brief things too. So.
Excellent. Wow.
And I'm also the lead writer and designer for something that you're familiar with. Sentient.
Oh, look at it! Look at it right there! Amazing.
So when Modiphius started their community content program, that they called the World Builders program, I went through and brought to life my world of sentience, where robots that were terraforming a planet kind of just randomly gained sentience one day, and now they're trying to form a world. So,
Yeah, and
lots of cool stuff.
You won the inaugural prize for that, didn't you? Like, you were the first to get that.
That this one has legs, and
Yeah.
Modiphius, I think, is matching the first $500 of sales that the core rulebook does, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was. I love the game. Every time I run it, people say that they love it. So I hope to do more with it in the near future.
I have certainly enjoyed it. You've run it for us twice. Those episodes are on the YouTube, so people can go and check those out. Hey, and Jim Johnson has joined the stream. Hey, Jim.
Oh, no pressure. No
No
pressure.
pressure. The
I'm
boss
not a
is here.
project manager in this room.
All right. And I guess, that's a great time to say, thanks specifically to Modiphius and John for sending me a review copy of Federation-Klingon War so that I can flip through it right now for everybody online. And I mean, let's start just by talking about the cover. What can you tell me about like how that came together? Because it's
I don't know.
beautiful, it's scary.
So we had started working on this project for, like I said, it was over 2.5 years ago, or probably about 2.5 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
And we had gotten a good chunk of it done. And Jim's like, "Hey, you want to see something?" I was like, "Sure." And he sent me like what this looked like in its initial stages, without any of the color and whatnot. And we both at the same time said, "Lots of explosions is good here." So the other cool thing that we wanted to make sure of is that this starship that's on the front cover that's flying at us, that's not a named starship from any Star Trek series, right? It is a ship that has no name, and that's kind of like one of the driving forces behind this book, is that this is your story about your ship. It's not a story about the USS Discovery or the Enterprise or anything like that. This is your ship's story as they tell a parallel story to what the USS Enterprise experienced.
Mm-hmm. Two comments from Jim. We got congrats to Al for his lead writing on the book and to all the contributors for another successfully delivered Star Trek Adventures product. And cover art is by Tobias Richter of the Lightworks.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, and like if you look at it as a gatefold with the back cover, there's even more like lasers and explosions happening.
Yeah,
as
let
well.
me pull it
Like,
up on
I
the
would
screen
love
for
to
people.
see,
There we
like,
go.
a
Yeah.
poster of that I could put up on the wall someday, like, just to have above my bed, something
Yeah.
like that.
We have forgotten the unforgettable, the last to unify our tribes. Kalas to Kuvma.
Right.
Very good.
You
Well,
know that whole first season of Discovery is just rife with really cool lines about war.
yeah.
I think that we got all of the quotes into the chapters here, which is really fun.
You know what? You're feeding me these lines, and now I gotta ask. Like, it's an. How did you feel about adapting something like Discovery's War, which, in the Discovery itself is a contentious series in the fandom. Like, it probably would have been pretty difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
what let me like Discovery, like I said, contentious show, and war is a challenging topic, so like what does it take to put that into a book like this?
So one of the first bits that I saw of writing came from Michael Duxbury, and it was all about the trauma system that he created for this, where he goes in and talks about getting scars on your character for being a part of the war, making it hard for your character to be a good person during wartime.
Oof.
And when I read that, I kind of got my lens. Like, we decided, or I decided at that moment, that we wanted this to be about characters, and we could add these wartime special rules and things like that for people to use if they want. But more importantly, we wanted it to be about the characters. So every step of the way, we try to provide guidance as to how characters change during war. I mean, the USS Discovery was a science vessel, like an experimental research vessel, and now all of a sudden it's the number one tactical tool in a war.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to tell those stories, and we wanted to not shy away. We actually have a content warning.
Yep.
In the front page here, we have a safety checklist in the back.
Yeah.
That and you get that safety checklist as a downloadable PDF too, whenever you purchase the book. So we didn't want to shy away from the horrors of war. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that Star Trek tells a lot of stories that have to do with life and how the world works. Well, war is a part of that, unfortunately, and one would say it's in human nature. I hate to say that, but we wanted to show how the war impacts the people that are being a part of it. So that was the driving force. And looking at Discovery at the time when we decided to greenlight this, Discovery was still like one of the number one streamed shows that there was. It was one of the most like researched shows like on the internet. So as far as Star Trek goes, anyways, and we realized that there was something special about this war, and the fact is, Discovery's gone for half of it.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah,
more
it's true.
than half of it.
Yeah.
Right? So if we want this to be a story about your characters and their experience with war, and your ship and its experience with war, now you have this tapestry that is untouched, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your ship can now be the hero ship because the one that we saw on TV is gone.
Yeah.
Right? So we wanted to kind of give players that power to tell this story about what was happening. We do splash in little events that are canon from the series along the way.
Yeah, we'll see a couple of those, hopefully.
Yeah, it's your ship. You're telling the story now. In fact, like, the final few episodes of season 1 of Discovery take place on Kronos. Well, the final mission in this book.
Oh, spoilers!
Hey,
good. There you go. Good.
Yeah. It's on. It's
it's your story,
right?
And your contribution. Yeah.
Right. It's really really cool how it all came together, and I would argue that not having so much canon to like weigh on your shoulders. Like, we could have done Dominion War, right?
Yeah.
But Dominion War has 5 years, 100 episodes that we would have to really mine for, what does this timeline look like? And most of the events are already accounted for on screen. Like, there are a couple of things off in the Gamma Quadrant that are mentioned that we never see, but a lot of the major stuff we've already seen. So now, with this particular war, you can tell your story and not have to worry about canon pressing down.
Yeah, so there's an interesting thing that I was thinking about when I was reading through this book, that, you are facing off against an enemy that can't be sort of dehumanized. Like, people can do that to Klingons, but you've really done a good job of not doing that, of showing them as people with motivations and political reasons that they're doing this, with the Beacon of Kalis and their religious and their empire coming together. Like, all of those facets are really put in it, and I think that makes for, like you're saying, a more compelling, character-driven story, as opposed to the Dominion War, where you can just be like, well, the Jem'Hadar, they don't really have a choice, and they're not really, they're not really people, and the founders are this terrifying monoculture, and we can kind of paint them all with the same brush. Built on, like, the Klingon core book and all of the other stuff that the Star Trek Adventures line has done, you really do create that situation where you have to be introspective about the missions you're doing and the choices you're making. And,
Yeah, and we even provide guidance. Like, this is clearly told from the Starfleet lens, right? But we provided guidance in there on how to flip it and tell it from the Klingon point of view.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, no, I loved it.
The Klingon point of view is a story that we haven't seen a ton of, right? We've seen a couple of, scenes where the Klingons are talking about, their tribes being apart and then being united and things like that. But, like, I imagine there's a lot of turmoil that's going on among the houses at the same time as this war is going on, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, like, if you wanted to flip it and tell it from a Klingon perspective, you could absolutely do that with this book with just a few tweaks.
Yeah. All right, so let's flip through it a little bit. We've talked about some of the things that are in the book. Let's look at them in order. Quick, high level. We got our lovely graphic design and table of contents with the white background for original series era. Introduction, we've got our big red content warning, as you mentioned. Um, Character options. So, as with any book, we got a couple of new species. Any particular ones that you want to highlight that you thought were fun to include?
I mean, we had a list of like a dozen that we
Yeah.
had to trim down because we couldn't fit them all. And we really wanted to focus on species that didn't look as human or might need different needs than humans, that you see in the background of scenes, especially like during the Star Trek movies, because what we want to do, we really want to unite this TOS era, right? We've got Discovery,
Mm-hmm.
TOS, TAS, and the movies, and it's all in the same century. So why wouldn't some of the interesting aliens that we see in the background of Star Trek 4 or any of the Star Trek movies, why wouldn't they be a part of this? So we looked for the most interesting looking alien species out there. The Ariello is, I think, what my favorite is, just because it's a centaur.
Yeah.
And they're very large. Like, if you think about, if you want a character like an Ariello on your ship, you have to make modifications to that ship. They can't, they can't fit through. Like, how do they ride a turbo lift?
Yeah,
You know what
exactly.
I mean? Like it's a centaur. Like, I mean, so we really wanted to take these different species and look at how might they make your ship more interesting if they were there.
Cool. I mean, I'm a Strange New Worlds fan, so I love seeing the Anar. That's my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, like you said, wartime characters. So we got the wartime traits to help sort of define your character and what they've done in the war or what their role might be. And some new career events as well as and focuses. Where were the focuses?
Oh yeah,
No,
we've
it's
got focuses too and
yeah,
values.
yeah. Yes, the random wartime focuses that like being focused on Klingon culture to be more likely to play into the campaign and all those things. Very good.
Yeah, Alice and I went through and made these lists to show, like, one, if you've had war experience in the past, how you might bring that with you, but two, a lot of the stuff you gain as you're
Yeah.
going through the war, right? Especially like those traits that you were talking about. Like, you look at the prisoner of war trait,
Mm.
right? You have to experience that, and maybe that's something that happens to you while you're role playing through the campaign.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of support here, and like you said, that kind of like development of your character, what they've that was one thing that really stuck out to me, like the refocusing of a character who might have been a peacetime character and how the war has changed them before you kind of sit down at the table is very intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the big one that sticks out right now is Mabenga
Yeah,
on Strange New Worlds, right? We
absolutely.
had we like when we were writing this, Strange New Worlds hadn't even been officially announced yet. Never mind the fact that
They'd have a
season two
character
was
that,
taking the
yeah.
Klingon War and making it part of their characters. Like, we really lucked out on that, and you'll
Oh,
see when we get to the trauma section in just a few minutes how Mabenga is really like the newest version of this trauma system.
I mean that
That
that definitely read as planned. So well done. Good luck. Very lucky. Uh,
Yeah,
well, and I
when
mean it's not luck. It's
the
not
season
luck. It's good
dropped,
planning.
yeah, we were going back and forth, like, when the new episodes dropped. We're like, oh man, can you believe this?
Oh, it's so good. Uh, yeah. So we got talents. So we got
You might notice some of these, by the way, from
yeah,
Raccoon.
15 new
I
talents.
adapted some.
I definitely was gonna ask. I was like saboteur. Yep. I recognize that from Acton Cthulhu. Absolutely. Uh,
Combat Gunner is from Octung Cthulhu.
there you go. Yeah, in the
Yeah, so this again provides people that like to do the pew pew type of missions, when they're doing a war. these provide a more tactical focus for your characters. These talents, all
Mm-hmm.
focused around either combat or diplomacy. Really, were the two things that I was looking
Yeah. And so again, just sort of jumping up high level for the viewers, talking about the sort of table of contents. We're all in the player sort of sections, the character options here, and then we're going to get into optional rules. Then we're going to get into the cool tactical campaign overlay. Then there's a big section of adventures. So there's a lot in this book, in this 240 pages. What can you tell us about these wartime roles? So we've
at. So
got
in the
big
player's guide,
full page spreads. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim assigned me a thing where I was to go through all the different roles on a starship's, like that would be like the CMO and the chief science officer and things like that, and say why they were the best and explain them and give them each a full page. Well, there were other roles in the game that didn't make it into the player's guide for those in-depth reviews, and many of them were focused on wartime. So I went through the operations division and the command division and pulled out the roles that are in there, and tried to drill down into what made them special and how they would be useful during wartime. And then I also looked at a couple of the civilian roles that were
Mm-hmm.
originally introduced in the player's guide and drilled down into them a little bit more as well. So these are all different roles that your character might have or might pick up as you are traveling through a wartime story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love the combat engineer.
Yeah. Well,
That's awesome.
let's look at the combat engineers. So we've got information of how to play them, background, interesting stuff, and then we've got a role ability. So how does a role ability add to your character? Does everybody at the table get them? Are these roles optional? What? How would you
So
play it?
roles are basically talents that come along with having a specific role on a ship.
Okay.
So the captain has a specific captain talent that they always have, and so on and so forth. And these role abilities are always attached to this character so long as they have this role.
Excellent. Very good. And so, for example, the combat engineer, as you're saying, to represent your ability to build and repair, your role ability grants you one bonus momentum when you succeed at an engineering task during a combat encounter. Fun things to do there.
Yeah, for like building traps or trying to, spot a weakness, things like that. Like, I think that there's a lot of really fun stuff. If I was playing this campaign, I would probably try to do a combat engineer.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Of course, you never get to play. You're just running it all the time, right?
Well, I do love to be a GM. It's, maybe someday.
Maybe one day. All right, we've got a weapons and gear section.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Weapons
got.
in here is really just, there's not a ton of like new guns or armor or anything like that, but ways to use
Mm-hmm.
torpedoes and phasers that are outside the norm. Aaron Pollier wrote some really crazy stuff in there that is actually kind of terrifying, and talks about why don't you detonate torpedoes in atmosphere and things like
Yeah.
that.
Oof, that was interesting. That was interesting to read the comparison of what a torpedo versus a nuclear device that we recognize.
Right.
And why we don't see that happen in Star Trek. Yeah, okay. Well, we're into the meat of it, the trauma of war. Something that is a heavy topic, something that is so important to talk about in a campaign like this, and not something that we have seen so far in Star Trek Adventures. So, how does that feel like? Does it feel like a departure from the spirit of the game, or does it feel like expanding the game to you?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, right? It is a little bit of a departure from what we're normally doing. However, because the departure is based off of some horrifying events that your character has gone through, and I think that we see this trauma of war in a lot of different characters all throughout Star Trek.
Yeah.
We really do. You know, when you think about Benjamin Sisko losing his wife, you know, against the Borg.
It's a powerful scene in the open episode, in the first episode.
Right. And like, Jim will always bring up, you know, Nog losing his leg.
Oof.
You know, that whole bit was very traumatic to him. And,
well,
you know,
even in The Next Generation, I'm thinking, I mean, it's still attached to DS9. I was like, I'm trying to come up with another example that's not DS9, but the chief, transporter chief, O'Brien just not being able to talk to a Cardassian in 10 Forward.
Yep. Yeah, or like Liam Shaw in Picard season 3.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right? Like that scene with Picard in the bar was what won over the audience. Everybody hated Liam Shaw until that one scene in the bar where he's talking about, you know, being a part of this war that scarred him. You know, and of course, like I said, M'Benga is like the prime example of this right now in Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
So I think that though it might feel a little bit different than what you're used to role-playing in Star Trek Adventures, I think that it has a part in Star Trek. And we just want to remind players that it's not just ships firing on ships and people firing on people. There are names associated with those people. There are, you know, people on those ships. In fact, we even added a rule in here that talks about casualty reports. And when you're in a battle, you roll and see how many people like die.
That
like,
one.
You even have to name them, right? And like,
yeah,
this wasn't just something off screen. This was someone that was part of your crew.
Yeah.
So, you know, we really wanted to hammer home that war changes people, and war makes it hard to be a good person.
Yeah.
And Michael Duxbury came with this trauma of war section that is optional. Characters can choose to use it if they want or not. And in so doing, you accumulate these scars, which are permanent negative complications that are always with you. And that gives the GM a lot of flexibility in stories they can tell to challenge you, and so on and so forth. And the only way you can get rid of these scars is by actually using your milestones, essentially. And when we say scars, I mean, they can be physical, it can be mental.
Yeah.
You know, it could be a little bit of everything. So,
all right.
Yeah, this was the first bit of writing that I saw for the book. This is like, I get it now. I've got the vision.
All right, let's catch up a little bit with the chat. We got P. Goodman 13 sitting here making some ship registry graphics and other stuff for my channel and listening to the maestro talk about this great book.
Am I the maestro?
You're the maestro.
Oh,
you're the maestro.
Thanks, Patrick. Patrick and I are gonna play through a turn of the tactical campaign on Friday night on Facebook.
Nice.
So.
I did see that. What time?
A chance to do it tonight too. Yeah.
What time was that? What time on Friday? I think I saw 6 p.m.
Yeah, I think it's 9 Eastern time.
9 Eastern.
Same
okay.
Time we just started.
Oh, there you go.
It might be 8. I'll advertise it once.
Yeah, when we get there. Let's see. He also said that not necessarily directly related to the war, but Hugh Culber in Discovery, how he died, came back to life, and his husband had to live with that. And Jim is ducking out for a bit, but might be back. And Michael says that he loves Liam. Look for his Star Trek Explorer magazine premiere on April 9th, written by Michael Dismuke.
Oh yeah, that's coming, and I think that, I think everybody's gonna be really excited to read what Michael put in there.
Excellent.
I think it's good stuff.
All right. So yeah, we talked about scars. We talked about casualty reports a little bit. We've got play advice. So lots of really important things here for players and GMs to go through to really decide if this is the campaign that they want to play and how much they want to invest into it, because it can be heavy. It can absolutely be heavy. And as we're stepping into chapter 2, game mastering the campaign, we're going to get to our safety checklist that you've written. And well, that has been put into the book. Can you tell me how that came
Yeah.
together?
Yeah. So Allison Seib is
Yeah.
just right finger on the pulse with all of this stuff. She also did my stuff for Sentience as far as the safety checklist and stuff, Session Zero as well. And so she really took it upon herself to go through and really dig down into what wartime in Star Trek might be. However, there's also stuff on this safety checklist that can just be applied to any campaign, and I would recommend using it in
100%. A safety checklist, safety tools, those are so important.
like and the Session Zero, right? Like how
Yeah.
let's talk about this. What are you interested in? Like what has to happen off screen? What do you not want to deal with at all? We did Trekify the terms. So those of you that are familiar with kind of the common lines and veils and X card, we called it the full stop card. And then on our safety checklist, we talked about always okay and then yellow alert or red alert, which I thought was pretty clever on Allison's part. So
Yeah.
yeah, she did an awesome job getting that all in there. And she actually wrote up the entire safety checklist as well.
Let's go directly to the handout version in the back of the book. It looks really good. Yeah, and like you said, when you buy the book, you get the PDF version. You get this separate PDF version of the safety checklist. You can give out to your players, and take care of the people at your table. Make sure that everybody is enjoying the adventure that you are taking together.
Yeah, and like I said, these are applicable to all campaigns. It's not just
Yeah.
this war. So I recommend it for every Session Zero that you do.
Yeah,
Even if you think you know someone that you're playing with, still hand it out.
absolutely. And I mean, like, even people who bleed, I just want to talk about that for a second. Just the concept of emotional bleed from your character to you as a person when you are role playing a situation is a very serious thing that people need to consider. And having those conversations sets you up to have a safe way to say, let's stop and change this or debrief or whatnot. And it can, like you said, it can catch you completely by surprise, with somebody that you've gamed with for decades. It can catch you personally by surprise because you didn't know that something was going to come. And I mean, at the end of the day, I personally just want my players to have a good time, so I want to support their safety in gaming. Patrick jumps in and says it is 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time and 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Facebook Live this Friday.
Thank you, Patrick. You're going to need to keep reminding me of that. A blur of a week.
Yeah, you've been on a Blitz media tour. You're busy.
Yeah, Friday is the last day of the media tour for this. So.
All right.
Yeah, and then the next section is really about getting ready to deliver the campaign itself. So it's like the Game Master section. However, we got this weird, because we're introducing the tactical overlay in this book,
Mm-hmm.
we also needed a Game Master section. So I was really toiling between, do I put the Game Master section first or do I put the overlay first? And what I eventually thought of was, as I went back to my teacher background, right? Because I teach 7th grade science. And, I was thinking about front-loading vocabulary is one of the things that we do with most of our units. So I decided that we would go through the Dungeon Master or the Game Master section and talk about the stuff that you'll be seeing once you hit the tactical overlay.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about like points of interest and scripted events and all those type of things. Even though I haven't explained to you what they are in this chapter. I'm just telling you how you can use them. And then once we get to the tactical overlay, that's where you see, like, okay, this is what a scripted event is. This is what a point of interest is, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so we can kind of jump through that. We get to the types of missions, like you said. This is cool. This is more like designing your own, but like you said, it comes to the points of interest. We get to tactical, exploration, routine, and unknown, which we're gonna play with a little bit.
And then if you look on page 53, I actually went through, like, there are 24 mission briefs and 6 missions in this book. But if your players are eating this up and you want more content, guess what? I went through this book, which is the Discovery Campaign Guide, which is also there behind you.
Oh, there it is.
And I found all the mission briefs and missions in there that happened during the tactical campaign.
Excellent.
And I tell you how to adapt them to the tactical campaign overlay. So
that's pretty solid. I was gonna ask, definitely. You snuck that one in.
Yeah, when he saw it, he was all excited about it.
I definitely was going to say, like, so if somebody is picking up this book because they're so pumped to adventure in, to experience the Klingon Federation War, what other supplements would help them with that? Or is this standalone? Like, do they need the Discovery Guide?
They don't need it, no.
They don't need it.
We touch upon, like, a quick timeline of events and things like that. We don't do a ton of lore about this is what is happening during this era, because we already did it in the Discovery Campaign Guide. So I guess if you want more lore about what's going on in those 2 years that the campaign's happening, grab the Discovery book, but you don't need it. Everything you need to run the campaign is here.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next little section, avoiding burnout. It definitely stuck out to me as something that makes sense because of the emotional themes, like, that you're using in this book. But is that the only reason why it ended up in this book and we didn't see it in a different book?
It was something that we recognized that we probably should have gotten into the Game Master Guide, and there's a little bit in there about keeping everybody engaged.
Yeah.
What we found is that because of the heaviness of the war campaign, it can be a little bit numbing, I think, and you might lose player engagement. And so this is a little section that talks about how can you keep this fresh. In the tactical overlay, you're randomly rolling different points of interest and things like that. But if you played through 3 ship-to-ship combat mission briefs, change it up. Even if you roll that you're supposed to do another one, change it up so your players can experience something else. To keep them engaged and let them see different parts of the war, and so on and so forth. So that's really where that came from. I think that it's a good tool to use across any Star Trek Adventures campaign.
Mm-hmm.
It just got in here, which I was thankful for.
Well, there you go. Like you said, there's so much in this book that you can use elsewhere. It's not just an adventure or the tactical campaign. Patrick also says, agrees, you don't need the Disco Campaign Guide, but it has a boatload of stuff, NPCs, space frames, and additional species. That will definitely help you out. So, we have one more section. Oh, we've got notable star systems. I didn't note this one in my...
Yeah, that was just something that Aaron Paulier threw together. If you want to create, like, a lot of people get really excited about Narendra Station in the Shackleton Expanse game.
Mm-hmm.
So this was kind of our chance to build a little star system for you to call your own home, your own base of operations.
Gotcha.
And this is Aaron doing amazing Aaron stuff. Really creating some fun, like really interesting places that you can call your home base.
Yeah.
Whether you're Starfleet or Klingon.
Excellent. Well, one last thing before the tactical campaign overlay is the optional rules section. And so I gotta say, of the 8 that are included, do you have a favorite?
That's really hard because so it's really hard because most of these came from other 2D20 lines or the SRD, the System Reference Document,
Okay.
and I adapted them to Star Trek Adventures. So I really like two of them that I will point out. The Simplified Multi-Ship Combat, which I took from the Homeworld role-playing game. Basically, if you want to do a large-scale space battle,
Mm-hmm.
and you want a bunch of ships fighting each other, what you could do is literally just take each player and put them in charge of a different ship.
Right.
Don't worry about the minutia about who's doing what on the bridge. Have everybody control their own ships and do a big space battle. I think that'll be really fun, and I think that's been needed for a while. But my favorite is by far the ship power allocation rules.
Okay.
Because that's a system that I wrote myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it works really well, and I think it's super flavorful, where once you enter combat, you take your ship's power, and you split it up among your 6 systems.
Yeah.
Right? And then whenever that system will assist with a roll, you take 1 power away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So this gives your engineer something to do every single turn, whether it's moving power from one system to another or generating more power, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really, really proud of that system, and I hope everybody starts using it.
Excellent. Oh, we gotta say thank you to Michael for gifting a tier 1 sub to one of the viewers. Thanks, Michael. Which also made me realize that my OBS was like layered incorrectly. Oh, it's fixed now. OBS silly things. That's excellent, and obviously, like, there's clearly a lot of good things for lots of people here, because I was very interested in these optional rules, and I chose my favorite as not either of the ones you said, because I love the stealth and infiltration one. I really think, like, just breaking it up into those 3 different states of hidden, detected, and revealed makes such an interesting mini game for, like, a one-off session of this is an infiltration, like, adventure that we're telling. And I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, I think so. That came from the SRD. I think it might also be in the Dishonored.
That makes sense.
And what I was thinking when I was, I took it out of the SRD and I like Trekified things, right?
Yeah.
And so when I was going through doing that, I was thinking of like Metal Gear Solid.
Mm-hmm.
When you're playing Metal Gear Solid, and then like all of a sudden you see one of the guys and it makes the loud noise. Like they recognize that you're somewhere near, but they don't know exactly where you are. Like that's what I was thinking about when we were going through this section. But yeah, it's a cool one. And to be honest, I wasn't sure if the stealth states or the pursuit track were going to make it into the book at all, because they're so specific, especially the infiltration. And there's a couple of pages of it, but I've heard a lot of people saying that they were excited about it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Jim kept it in.
And like you say, for Strange New Worlds Season 2, when we're seeing Mbenga and we're seeing Nurse Chapel do these sort of situations, like when they're on the Klingon ship, that feels like these rules play those scenes directly.
Absolutely.
Cool. So let's jump into what is a relatively small section of the book, but gives people so much game to play. The actual overlays. So, do you want to give people a quick rundown, or do you want me to just go through the 3 phases? How do you want to describe it?
I can just do a brief overview. First of all, if you're watching and you're familiar with Pathfinder's Kingmaker system or Band of Blades strategy phase, this is very similar to that. It's a scaling out of the role playing from the personal level to the fleet level. Okay. And it's almost like a board game that happens in between missions, where the players, work together to assign assets to put, to try to quell hotspots all around the galaxy. And what's cool about it is, what I've really enjoyed about it is you don't need a GM for it. So I am often playing alongside my players during this phase, and then I go and I GM, their session. So that's been a lot of fun as well when we were playtesting it.
All right. So it operates in 3 phases. When you're starting your campaign, you generate some assets, like you said, that you will then apply. Then you create these problems, the hotspots, and we move those assets around. Should we generate some randomly? And
we can do that right now.
Do a real quick one, see what it likes. Oh, I have the... There we go. Hey everybody, we're also, this channel is Roll20 Ambassadors, so, when I use a virtual tabletop, I tend to pop into Roll20. And so I just put us with a little star map right here. I got a couple of tokens on the side that I can use, and we can generate 5 assets for Al and I to play with. And actually, I'm going to go back to the book for a second to show the table here. So we have...
on page 77.
Yeah, so we got a D20 asset. We got a D20 chart for asset types, 4 different asset types. And then we've got a bunch of tables to actually pick them.
So the way that this works, Merrick, is character assets and ship assets hang around.
Yeah.
You get to reuse them so long as they aren't destroyed or lost. However, resource assets are a one-time use, and they can only be assigned to a point of interest if there's a ship or character asset already there.
Mm-hmm.
So I rolled 5 D20. I got 11, 18, 2, 5, 19. So we've got
a character asset.
It looks like we've got 3 character assets and 2 resource assets.
Okay, so my stream deck is updating, so everybody on the on the stream got a ding. All right, no ships. We have three characters and 2 resources. Ooh. Well, yep. I'll just hide this lovely Oh, they're seeing it right now, so I'll just delete it.
So then what you have to do is roll what those assets actually are.
There we go.
Because they each have stats. So I think, for this we can just jot down what numbers we have. So on a resource table, we got a 17, which is a Federation supply chain that helps with our medical and our military power, which is good. And then number 8 is a secret operations team. Which has a high military and a high personal.
Okay.
Cool as well. All right, and then
it'd be nice if I could spell operations. Hey.
All right, so our
characters.
Number 7.
No, roll a 2. Roll a 2. All right, 7. Who have we got?
I got Lieutenant Lawrence Stiles. Lieutenant Stiles.
All right.
Let's get a special ability here, which we'll talk about. It's not really going to come into play this round. But just so you know, so each of these assets have 5 different powers associated with them. It's medical, military, personal, science, and social. And these powers are derived by the character stats that are in your allies and adversaries of all the books. So that's where we end up with these stats.
Mm-hmm.
All right. 15. Commodore James Cormack.
Okay. I'm going to go CM.
He's got a large, really bit of power, or personal power, which is awesome. And then Commodore Robert April.
Hey, Robert April.
Robert April's social is as high as it can be, which is great.
All right.
So, once you guys, if you play through this, you'll see that each ship and character asset have one stat that is bolded. That's considered their primary power. If you ever send them to a point of interest where their primary power is what you are trying to use, you get to reroll 1d20 in your pool, which is pretty awesome. So ideally, you can get them to those locations.
I definitely, when I was reading it, I was like, okay, cool, a bolded one. And then I looked at the resource assets, and I was like, I don't see any that are bolded. What am I missing? And then I scrolled to the next page and went, oh, resource assets don't get rerolls. Well, that makes sense.
So just so you know, so 2 assets can be assigned to any point of interest.
Okay.
One asset is the lead on the roll. The other asset is basically like supporting on that roll. So they get to the one asset does a normal pool of dice, and the other asset gets to roll 1 die, just like when you're assisting in the regular Star Trek Adventures game.
That makes sense, yeah. All right.
So we have our 5 starting assets. Now, the starting pace for the campaign is 5. So that means we roll 5 points of interest.
Ooh. And
Let's see what we ended up with.
So as a reminder for people, there are 4 different types: tactical threats, exploration, routine, and unknown.
Yeah, and what's crazy about the unknown one is you have to assign assets there before you know what the actual thing is.
Yeah, I love it.
So you want your generalized things dealing with the unknown, I think, usually. So, all right, so 3. 3 is...
We got a tactical.
We got a tactical. Looks like we got 3 tacticals.
Oh, dear.
An exploration and an unknown.
Okay, so I'm going to do like so. We've got 3 tactical threats, an exploration, and an unknown, you said?
Correct.
All right, so let's toss these out on here. I'm going to make blue unknown. Blue feels unknown, whereas green feels like exploration to me. All right, so we've created this... Yeah, we've created this, like, tactical map of challenges for our crew. Or our admirals.
Right, for our admirals. So here's the thing about tactical points of interest. They have this thing called an urgency.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are familiar with games like Forbidden Island, Pandemic, things like that...
Love those games.
If you don't deal with a tactical threat, the urgency increases. And if the urgency increases to a 3 or even higher, a lot of bad things start happening to your galaxy. So it's usually pretty important to deal with those tactical points of interest. But if you don't have the right stuff to do it, it's hard to do. So our first tactical point of interest, which was a 17, is a renowned enemy captain is operating in this sector.
Oof.
So can we do this instead of writing the name? You write military 4, urgency 1, or U1.
Yeah, for sure. So we're gonna do military 4 and then urgency 1. So I'm gonna put that as a tooltip, and so now if you mouse over it, you can see it.
Okay.
That's on the top left one.
Awesome. I see it now.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't...
Our second one...
Yeah.
Our second military is... Or sorry, our second tactical... Oh, this is an interesting one. 13. An advanced enemy ship has crashed and needs to be recovered. So this can be personal 2 or science 2.
Okay. Personal 2, no science 2. Okay.
It's got a little special ability if things go bad.
Nice. What's our third tactical?
So our third tactical is a 3. A secret research site is testing illegal weapons. This is personal 1. Was it urgency 2?
Okay. Love it.
All right, so our next one is exploration, and it looks like I rolled a 17.
Okay.
A planet has mysteriously disappeared.
That never goes well.
No. And this is either science 4 or social 3.
Okay.
That's hard. That's a rough one.
Okay. And our
So
unknown, we don't know.
Don't roll until after we've assigned assets.
Oof. I would have loved to have had some ships to send to things. So
let's go to our Commodore April.
he's the talky guy.
He's a social guy. However, he's also decent in personal. He's got a 12-2 in personal. Unfortunately, there's nothing social out there, is there?
There is. So our exploration with the disappearing planet has a social 3.
Awesome. So Robert April has a 17 target number with a 5 crit range, and he gets a reroll. So I think maybe we send Robert April to that planet, and then we'll see if we want to support him with it.
I agree. I definitely think
Now, if we do
that makes sense.
One of our tacticals is not going to have someone assigned to it.
Ooh, well, we do have one tactical that has no urgency.
Correct.
The advanced enemy
However,
ship.
let's read what happens if that one is not dealt with.
Uh-oh.
If this mission is failed, it does not escalate. Instead, the Game Master may create a new Military 2 Urgency 1 point of interest next turn as the ship returns to service. So, basically, if we don't deal with that one, next turn there's going to be an additional point of interest that is Military 2 Urgency 1. Which isn't awful.
But maybe we'll get some reinforcements and we'll ask them to send us some ships.
Yeah.
Starfleet Command. We're sending out 2 commanders and a lieutenant. We need a couple of ships.
Right. So, we assume that all these people that we're sending to these points of interest are probably people that, have little shuttles or something that are getting them there. They were close enough, that type of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They just don't have a warship that can deal with an advanced Klingon. Right. So let's see, what's Lieutenant Styles good at?
So Lieutenant Styles is good at...
he's got a reroll on military. He's a 13-2 on military.
Yeah. And Need for Speed. Well, that doesn't matter. Yeah, so he's a 13-2 on military. So should we send him over to Military 4, Urgency 1? I
like that. The scary enemy captain.
Yeah.
I think that's good. And we're still just we're in the observation deck. We're moving our little ships around on a thing. We're just planning it out, and then we'll commit.
Right. It looks like James Cormack has a 13-3 on personal.
Okay.
With a reroll. So maybe he goes to that other tactical, the
advanced enemy ship. But yeah, the other one, the research site is already at urgency 2.
Yeah, we need to deal with that urgency 2. I think Cormac needs to go there.
Okay.
But what will probably happen here is Cormac's probably going to generate us some momentum. Which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
So that gives us our Federation supply chain and our Secret Operations team. So Secret Operations team has a 13-3 personal and a 12-3 military. Should we send the operations team with Lawrence Styles to deal with the enemy captain over there?
Yeah, military 4 seems pretty terrifying. We should back them up.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so. And the Federation supply chain. So, unknown points of interest. If we don't deal with them, they just generate 1 additional point of interest next turn.
Okay.
That's at +1 power.
That means more fun things, right?
Right. So Federation supply chain has, like I said, it was military and medicine, right?
Mm.
Federation supply chain. Yep. It's
Military and medicine.
Military.
We don't.
Are they gonna help?
They're not really useful right now. Do we just hold them in reserve?
Yeah, I think we hold them in reserve.
Yeah.
Honestly, and keep them for next turn. Because remember, if you use a resource asset, it goes away next turn.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we can hold that Federation supply chain back because it's not going to help with the Science 4 Social 3 up there with April.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need it at the Oh, we can't do the like. Yeah, the only other thing I was gonna say, we can put the secret operations team over with Cormac and set the Federation supply chain over with Styles, and just re-roll James Cormac's first to try to generate a butt ton of momentum.
Mm. I think we save the supply chain for next turn because we're potentially going to have 2 additional things generated next turn, right?
Correct.
So I feel like play a little conservative. Patrick says, define fun in this context. And I mean, the thing is, I am always loving to play the game master, and fun for me is the complication for the players.
Right.
Let's tell a great story.
So I suppose we should start with James Cormac down here.
All right, show us how the rolls work.
So James Cormac is going to use his personal score here, and he has a 13-3. So every asset is assumed to have focus and what they need to go there. So he's just going to roll 2d20.
Okay.
And this is just like attempting a task in Star Trek Adventures, right? You want to roll at or below the 13 on this. Crits on a 3 or below.
Excellent. Bring in another one of these.
He did get two. Successes.
Okay.
Good.
And our difficulty was 1.
This is his primary power.
Okay.
So we could, in theory, re-roll one of these to try to get more momentum.
Yeah, trying to get the crit. I mean, we're getting 1 momentum. What's his focus?
His
Is it a 4? Is it something really good?
3. Yeah, it's a 3. You got a 15% chance. Probably not worth risking it this early in the game.
No, I'd say we should just take our 1 momentum and be happy with that.
I'm fine with that.
All right, 1 momentum. Now it's on that floating delta right there.
So, Robert April has a 17-5 in social.
Gonna do
this
a little.
Is a social 3.
Okay. 17-5 is very good. Social 3, so we need to spend a moment. But we should spend a momentum.
We should spend the momentum, I think.
I think so. All right.
Now, one thing that everyone should know when you're watching is momentum. If you have it at the end of a phase, you can turn it into what's called progression points. And progression points are basically upgrades to your force.
All right.
All right, so Robert April, we're rolling 3d20 with a reroll.
Let's do it. 17's pretty good.
All right, so there's 3 successes right there. We're going to reroll that 20 because we don't want a complication.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Robert April.
You're so handsome. You're so friendly. Thank you for your rerolls.
That's 4 successes.
4 successes, and we were going social on that, right?
And we were going social on that, so
we generate 1 momentum back.
Momentum.
Fantastic.
All right, so we've cleared 2 points of interest. Exploration is good to clear early too, because every time you clear an exploration, you earn 3 progression points, which is good.
Ooh.
All right, Styles is gonna lead over here with the secret operations team support.
Okay.
How do you feel about definitely spending that momentum to get a third die?
Yeah, oh, I think so. I mean, against the difficulty 4, I think we spend it. We want to
It's
deal
a
with...
13-2 military with a reroll.
Oh, good luck, Lieutenant Styles. How many?
He also has the secret operations team that is going to be adding another die as well, which is nice.
Right.
So we get 4 dice altogether, plus a reroll on one of Lawrence's dice. So, fingers crossed.
Let's see it. Let's see it.
It's a 13. Oh, he got 4 successes.
Incredible. That's
Secret
amazing.
Operations team. Secret operations team is a 13-3.
Zoom right in for people watching on the stream.
5 successes total here.
5 successes. We generate another momentum and we deal with that enemy captain.
Yes.
But our secret operations team have got to go. They're out of here. They took some casualties. The rest of them go rotate out on shore leave.
So that's how the rolling is done. We've assigned our assets. We've now rolled. Now we have to do the part that is always kind of scary, and that is what happens during resolution, right?
Ooh.
So some things are going to happen here.
And
one thing, Merrick, that we didn't mention is that if we were role playing, if we were actually doing the campaign side of things as well, that advanced enemy ship
could be our mission.
That as like a mission brief to actually role play through.
Exactly, which is I love. That's so cool because then you have that additional asset that's like, all right, players around the table, where are you going and what are you going to deal with?
Right. So that's another fun part of this. But let's just resolve what we have on the board. So
let's do it.
We had 3 successes, no flawed successes. So if you roll that 20 on any of your things that you succeed on, you still have to roll on a loss table, which is scary.
No, tables are never scary, Al. They're always fun.
Right. Do not suffer any serious setbacks or determined outcomes. So remove points of interest after successful missions. So the exploration, the tactical, and those 2 tacticals are removed. Unresolved tacticals point of interests. This enemy ship does not have a tactical point of or does not have an urgency.
Yeah.
So instead, that one is removed and is replaced by a difficulty 2, urgency 1 military thing next turn.
Very cool.
And then what happens with unknowns? Unresolved, unknown points of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Unknown point of interest was failed or not investigated. It is removed from play. Next campaign turn, an additional point of interest is generated, and each difficulty for any challenge attached to it is increased by.
Cool.
So, a couple of things. We then will roll for 2 more assets.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go up to 7.
6 because we lost 1.
6 assets and 7 points of interest.
And we might have resources that can't be sent into particular things. We might have people that are not suited for the various ones that we roll.
And one thing that I didn't roll on because it's kind of like adds a little bit more complication. Before you start rolling your dice, after everything has been assigned, you're supposed to roll for random events. And sometimes random events can happen at your location that make things even more challenging.
I'm gonna toss a random event. It would have been, the system is completely cut off from outside communications. Any resource committed here fails to take effect, but it's not used up. Number 6 would have been interesting if we got that on the enemy captain. Yeah,
if that hit the enemy captain, that would have been annoying. Oh, but we still would have succeeded. We just wouldn't have generated the momentum.
Yeah, you're right. Well, that's super cool.
We got 3 progression for clearing a exploration. We have
Yep.
1 momentum left. We can keep that momentum till next turn, or we can convert that into a 4th progression. Now, progression, the way it works is every 5 points you earn, you get to roll on the progression table. So I don't know that converting the momentum over to that would make sense right now. I think I'd rather bank that and bring it with us
Yeah.
into the next turn.
Which is what becomes campaign momentum, not like action time momentum.
Yeah, that's actually a really important thing that I don't think I've talked about enough doing these, is that the campaign momentum pool is separate from a character momentum pool when you are role-playing.
Yeah.
They're 2 separate.
I particularly like it because the way I'm seeing it, campaign momentum is your currency to buy additional things. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the campaign momentum is how you buy dice to support your guys in the tactical overlay.
Ah.
Yeah. So any momentum that's generated here becomes like it's just its own pool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then as we're coming towards the end of our time, a little bit over, but gently touching on the how many pages of adventure is there in this book? There's like 100 pages.
Yeah, actually, somebody pointed out to me that they thought there was more content in this book than there is in the Shackleton Expanse book.
Yeah.
Crazy. So the way it's laid out is there are 3 stages of the campaign, right? There's early war, mid-war, and late war.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of those is bookended by both a mission and what we call a scripted event. So these are events that actually happen in Season 1 of Discovery that you either read out or give to the players in some other way. It's a way to keep track of time, really. But in between those 2 bookends, it's suggested you play 3 turns of what Merrick and I just did for the tactical overlay. So it's like, run a mission, do 3 turns that could have mission briefs attached to them, and then run another mission, and that's the end of the first stage. So that's how it's laid out for this particular war. But if you wanted to use this campaign overlay for a different war, you can add more stages, you can add more turns, you can add less turns. I was talking with some people last night about the Dominion War. You almost want like a pre-war stage because there's a lot of
real
stuff
cloak and
going
dagger
on right before the Dominion War even starts.
Yeah.
So it's a very flexible system that can be applied in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And like you said before, just all of those mission briefs that you can toss into the middle of your game. Like, there's years and years of content in these next 100 pages.
Couple things to highlight about that too is that each mission brief and mission have a success criteria and a failure criteria that can earn you campaign momentum, progression points, or assets for the overlay. And the mission briefs themselves, there are 2 mission briefs that relate to each point of interest type. So if you know that you're going to an unknown point of interest, you can go and run one of the unknown mission briefs for that.
Beautiful.
So.
Yeah, and like you said, the mission briefs that you identified from the Disco campaign guide, you've added those parts so that if you're using them, they feed back into your campaign overlay.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I love it. It's such a cool system. It feeds into those like crunchy parts of my brain where I want to move the little pieces around on the table.
Yes.
And then we get to play a game and zoom into the character perspective and then pull back out. It's genius. Well done, sir.
Yeah, I wish that I could say that it was all my brainchild, but
of course
it really came from Ivan Sorensen of 5 Parsecs from Home and 5 Leagues from the Borderlands fame.
Mm.
He actually created the skeleton of the campaign overlay. And then I took it and through playtesting, tweaked it and made it feel a little bit more Trekky along the way. And so, whenever I get a chance, I thank him for that. And when I was going back, I was like, hey, what do you think of this? Like the primary power thing, we were finding that D20s were very swingy in the playtesting. So with the primary power rule, it kind of smoothed that out. And we found that it was a much tenser situation. And like, we were never ever fully out of the fight, or we were never ever just like super, glossing over it. So, so Ivan, thank you so much for the idea and the concept. And I think that, what if you see what people are going to be doing with this, it's going to be great.
Yeah. Patrick says you had a hell of a team working on this one, Al.
Yeah, we had, I think it was me and 10 others maybe. Because again, there was so much content.
Yeah.
And the tactical overlay itself, I took on as my baby because I was the lead writer, and I play tested it with a couple of close friends. But the missions themselves, my gosh, the stuff that people were putting, like,
there's some wild missions in here.
Michael Dismuke's mission in the campaign is, I just want to use it just as a standalone because it's so cool and out there. And then the final mission,
yeah,
like, we're bringing back assets and characters from all the prior missions.
It makes it
right?
cool
As part of it, and like you can even take leftover campaign momentum or progression and use it to buy things to help you in that final mission.
It makes everything that you have done up to there feel like it has an impact. Even things that you left on the table, you can now convert into a benefit for you. I love it. Super cool.
And without spoilers, the end of Act 2, the start of Act 3, I think it is, of that last mission is insane.
I think I know which one you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, Michael Duxbury really nailed it when he had this vision for an epic conclusion. So,
yeah, and then not to give them short shrift, but there's a bunch of starships in here as well. A whole bunch of named ships that you can mine for space frames. Yeah.
All the assets that you would get in the tactical overlay are in here to use as actual stat blocks as well.
Ooh, the Setch class on page 209 is gorgeous. What a interesting looking Klingon ship.
209, you said?
209. Flagship.
That's
like
sleek.
That's cool. That's interesting. And then of course the 210 Bird of Prey. That thing is just gnarly.
Yeah, I really like the design of that a lot.
Yeah.
We did get 2 different cleave ships in here too, which is awesome because it's a war and cleave ships are awesome.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring this book back up to the lovely Alpha Quadrant, Beta Quadrant map so we have something to talk over as we wrap up. But, Al, this is a cool book. It is a very cool book.
Yeah, I think we reached a point in the line where we knew that we were trying to just keep adding tools to people's toolboxes for what they can use with their campaigns, and we were able to kind of keep pushing the borders of what a role-playing game could be, and like in the fact that we even created a whole new game in Captain's Log, and this tactical overlay is basically its own game as well.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that I got to be a part of it. I'm like, the fact that Jim that asked me to do it was like, it's so flattering, and he continuously thanks me for it. So he's good people, and I would happily do it again. It's a lot of keeping track of stuff, and keeping track of people's word counts and things like that. But like I said, it was so much fun. I would absolutely do it again.
Amazing. Well, where let's see, where can people find you? What else are you doing? What do you wanna tell the internet at large before we sign off?
Well, GM's underscore Admiral is where you find me. It's just Admiral, but I always say Al at the end. Um, on all the socials. Again, Sentience 2D20. We've got the core rule book. We've got a book out called Tales from the Awakening that has 4 adventures in it. I'm excited about that. I'm flirting with the idea of a world guide that maybe might be working on over the summer. Currently working on a project called Once Upon, which is a fairy tale setting with my own system that I've designed. So
Woohoo.
I'm hoping that I can push that out by the end of April.
Wow. Very exciting. And of course, you'll be streaming this Friday with Patrick.
Yep. Yeah, and I believe that I think that you and I collaborated recently on a unnamed project, right?
Did we work together, Al? Is that true?
Isn't that weird?
Oh, I gotta say, it was
Yeah.
it was incredible fun.
Yeah, I'm excited that that you get to be a part of the second edition push for Star Trek Adventures. So I'm excited to have you on board as a co-writer. And, I just love what you do, and I respect you so much. So
Thanks, Al.
Yeah, this industry has brought me together with a lot of really cool people, and I count you among that group. So
Yeah, it's been an absolute privilege getting to write with people on this team and see the incredible stuff that's going on behind the scenes, because y'all are so talented. You are so skilled at putting together incredible ideas and stories, and I mean, we all just get to play in this Star Trek sandbox together, which is pretty cool.
yeah, it's a fun sandbox to be in for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming out and walking me through and viewers through your book, through the Federation-Klingon War Tactical Campaign for Star Trek Adventures.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm always flattered to be on your show, and I think that I think that there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff coming out of this book in the near future. As soon as now that people have it in their hands, and once they play through one turn of the campaign, it's going to start.
They'll be hooked. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even Jim Johnson said he just, like, he and Michael are playing through, are doing a playthrough for continuing conversations, and Jim said, "Yep, after the first turn, I got it." And I was like, good. So.
You get the fun. Yeah, and yeah, everybody watching, this is available right now. You can order it right now. You can get the physical copy shipped to you, and you'll get the PDF right away. So, like, go do that.
Yeah, do it.
All right, and thanks.
I guess one more thing real quick before we go.
Of course.
This can't, especially the campaign overlay, but like I know a lot of people are worried about second edition and backwards compatibility and things like that. I didn't know second edition was coming when we were writing this book. However, a majority of what's in here is going to be easily compatible with second edition, so you don't even need to worry about that. And at the same time, it's just a fitting swan song for first edition.
Yeah, having seen some of that stuff that's coming up, I can also say, like, you do not need to be worried. Like, second edition is going to be solid.
Any of these books that are
No.
Right?
And particularly this campaign overlay, these missions, these options, like, they are absolutely going to be pretty key in your second edition plays.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I think I was going to say one more thing. What was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say thank you to Modiphius again for sending me the review copy of the book to flip through with everybody today. Appreciate that company.
They're good people.
All right. Well, everybody have a wonderful night. Al, thank you again for coming out. For everybody who's watching live, thanks for coming and chatting and keeping our chat scrolling, and for people watching this later on YouTube, you also rock. Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone. Long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. I gotta find the right goodbye. What is this one? It's this one. My stream deck is, like I said, not quite working, so I gotta find it manually. But we're good. Live long and prosper. Have a good night.